I just found out that one of my friends died and OD'd from fentanyl. Here's my what I'd like to share about it. Welcome back to Keep Inspiration Alive. I'm Mr. Michael Adams, and so I got some news today. I was talking to a good friend of mine from high school, and talking, just kind of catching up, and as we were just kind of reminiscing about the last year and a half, something, sharing with me that his brother, he lives in Idaho, and his brother, he's all like, "Yeah, man, just tell you, his brother came back and lived with him. He also battled with addiction all his life, most of his life, like huge chunk of it." Right? And I'm like, "Oh, how's he doing?" He's like, "Well, he seems to be getting better." I didn't let him stay with me. I'm like, well, I don't really have anything to do with it. Like, I don't really have anywhere to put you. You're kind of coming unexpected. I'm just going to share the whole conversation that just kind of transpired, like my thought process behind the entire thing. And so, he ended up putting him in a homeless shelter, and he just thought, you can't just show up at my place and just expect me to do this. I've been doing this my entire life. And so, his daughter was here, and she's 19, and she wanted to learn coding. Since I'm a coder as well, and he helps a lot of people around the world. He's been very successful with doing that. He's very well known in the industry. So he's like, "Oh, I'll teach his daughter." And so his brother showed up, and he's like, "Listen, man, you gotta go stay in a homeless shelter, I guess." And he's like, when he saw him, he's like, "Man, he looked like crap. He looked like he was all cracked out, coming off a lot of drugs or something." I'm like, "Oh man, that sucks." Yeah, so I set him up in a homeless shelter, and then they kept him there for a week, and he's just he couldn't deal with it. He didn't want to live like that. I don't know what to tell you, man. You were homeless back in California. You come here, what do you think is going to happen? I'm not going to set you up with the place because, what am I going to do? We've gone through this route multiple times, and fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. This has gone on multiple times. I got a family, and I got to look out after them. Yeah, if you want to visit your daughter while she's here, you can. I don't have no problem with that. And then he ended up going to getting kind of to sober house living. In Idaho, the laws are a lot more strict than they are here in California. Marijuana is illegal there. Marijuana is actually one of the things that his brother is very highly addicted, or I would say addicted. Well, yeah, addicted to. He always held on to it like a crutch, really tight gripped. I have to have this. And so, we're talking for a little bit. He's like, "Yeah, man, he seemed to he seems to be getting better. He's got a job, but he can't really seem to sustain working too much. I got him up going to work with me, going "Hey, man, we got to be in the car at 6:30 every morning." And sure enough, he's like, "All right, I'm so about getting sober." And he really tried. He was really doing it, and he did. Conversation ended, he's still sober a year and a half. So I'm really happy to hear that. And I'm like, "So what got him to come out there?" He's like, "I don't know, man. It's he was living out of the back of a truck or back of a van with our other high school friend. He died." And I'm like, "Whoa, wait, what?" And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "So I won't say any names just out of respect, but I'm like, "He died?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, you hear about that?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't hear about that, man. I don't hang around with those. I don't I ditched that circle, all those circles, when I was on drugs." He's like, "Yeah, man, it's probably good for you, man, that you probably did that." Yeah, all of them are dying or close to death. All I keep hearing is just these horrible stories. So that's probably a good idea that you got away from them. So yeah. Anyway, so he died, and so my brother came out here, and he's all gung ho on getting sober. I'm like, wait a minute, let's not just gloss over that. Our other friend died. He's like, well, what do you mean? I'm kind of taken back that he died. I can't believe he died. He's like, really? Man, I expected him to die a long time ago. That's just what he does. That's what he did. He just did drugs. That's all he did. Every day, every night, that was what his life revolved around. Yeah, man, if you do drugs, you die. Just that simple. That's just how it is. And I'm like, yeah, man, I guess you got a point, And looking back on my story as well. So this was a friend also that when I was deep in my addiction, I was hanging around, spending a lot of time around as well. Now here's the thing. I asked my friend, because I found out he died about a year ago, last January actually. So about a year ago. I'm like, holy crap. And he's like, they were asking me to go to the funeral. I'm like, did you go to his funeral? He's like, oh no. I'm like, really? What's that? And he's all like, what am I going to say? you know, like, yeah, I knew him in high school. But like after high school, I mean, he was like kind of a nice guy, like in high school, but like after high school, he just couldn't like deal with life. He couldn't deal with people. He was like always scared and always hid. And I was like really reflecting on like what he was sharing with me. My friend is also kind of like a psychopath. He came to this realization a while ago. And once he came to that realization, I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess you kind of are, man. Like looking back on your life, my friend that was sharing the story with me. And but he's a psychopath. Like I always said, like, hey, you're like really interesting. You're an interesting person. I guess I'll share his name. So the friend that was sharing the story with me, I'm like, you're a very interesting person, Ron. You're very compassionate. And he's like, well, yeah, man, that's what you're supposed to do. So like, he's a compassionate psychopath, and we both kind of laughed. And he's like, yeah, I guess so, man. Like, I just try to be like a good person, like, but I have like zero emotions. So like, when I share this, to get an understanding of the framework of like what we're speaking here. And so like, and he's also very, very intelligent, and he always comes up with very wise things, but he sometimes comes across very, he could put things a little bit more gently sometimes, but it is one of those things that like when he speaks, he is speaking truth, because like he doesn't think about people's emotions when he speaks. He's just like, he really cares about like people's well-being and wants people to be good and good around him. And then like he like really just blatantly speaks his mind. He's just like, what, that hurt your feelings? Oh, I had no idea. Oh, I guess I'm sorry about that. So it's kind of funny. Like, I'm just like genuinely passionately concerned about you or things like that. But like, which is true. He's an interesting person. And so he's like, yeah, no, I didn't go to his funeral. Why not? And he's like, well, yeah, man, did you have the opportunity to? He's like, yeah, I had the opportunity to. If I really wanted to, I could have gone. I'm like, well, why didn't you go? Like, what am I going to say, man? Like, I knew him in high school. We were friends. And like, he was like kind of a good guy. He got in a lot of trouble and stuff like that. But like after high school, he just like hid, never really had a job, like did a bunch of illegal stuff and like terrorized a bunch of people. Like, what am I going to say? Like I have like nothing that would contribute to me saying anything good about him that would be truthful. And I'm like, huh. He's like, well, what about you? I'm like, what about me? He's like, can you think of anything good to say about him? And I'm like, well, there's always something good to say. He's like, well, can you think of anything that like positive about his life? Like since after high school, anything positive? And I really thought about that for a second. And I'm like, man, no, I guess I can't. I just knew him in high school, and he was like a really, good person. And it was very heart it's just a shame that these things like come about. And I shouldn't say the word shame. I don't like use the word shame. But then I started thinking about it a little bit more. There's a quote by the Dagra tribe, Dagara tribe of West Africa. And it goes a quote, and it's a small little community, and they live by different standards than we do here in the United States. And they have like different perspectives and viewpoints. It's very beautiful. And one of the things that they talk about is everyone is a genius. It is the job of the village to acknowledge and support the genius that resides in each one of us. Let me repeat that. Everyone is a genius. It is the job of the village to acknowledge and support the genius that resides in each one of us. So this has me kind of like rethinking the whole thing, We failed him. Basically, what it comes down to is we as society failed my friend. Can I think of anything positive to like share about his life after high school? I don't know. I want to. Inside perspective, I know he was a good person. Like when I used to hang around with him when I was doing drugs. Outside perspective, looking in, he didn't amount to anything. And my friend was even saying, he was like, it was just a waste of life. It's like, that's what happened. You do drugs and you just like, you don't do anything. You don't contribute anything, especially when you're running around terrorizing everybody. And it's like, yeah. So it's like, and then I like reflect back on that quote. Everyone is a genius. It is the job of the village to acknowledge. Let me make sure I get that quote right. Everyone is a genius. It is the job of the village to acknowledge and support the genius that resides in each one of us. So this has to be very conflicted. Um, I guess it really comes down to, I'm grateful that I could be alive, that I am alive. That very easily could have been me. That almost was me. I was running around with these circles of friends. A lot of them are dead, you know. And my friend Ron was even telling me, he's like, "Oh yeah, our other friend, like out of our circle back in high school, like he was telling me, like, he was out drinking. It's like, he's like, I'm glad I don't live there anymore. He's all like, I never really got into like the drug thing. I tried it, I didn't like it. I got out of it. But like, yeah, our other friend, he was like went out drinking, and like some people came over, and they're like, hey, let's go do some cocaine. He's like, oh man, I gotta. Something came up where he couldn't party all night, and then like, which is unusual because I know that other friend to like always say yes to like anything and everything that comes up. Let's continue the party longer, right? But something God, you know, intervention or something. He didn't go that night, and then he's all like, yeah. Then like those two people died. They overdosed on cocaine. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. And so like, this is like the stories that I'm hearing from like everybody. And like since my brother came back, he's now living with me. He got sober. So I guess maybe that will change one person's life because my friend died, and that's going to change that other person that was living with him in the back of a van in front of his mom's house. And it seems like he's getting a little bit more, according to my friend, his brother is getting a little bit more respectful and trying. Because we saw my other friend just being completely just angry and bitter and disrespectful to his mom and family and everybody. And so maybe that would be like an eye opener for my friend's brother who went back and moved back in the area to like live closer to his brother. And maybe that like changed his life in some dynamic. So I'm writing a book, and this is also kind of an eye opener for me as well. That maybe I need to speed this up a little bit just to help people resolve their unresolved issues and become their most authentic self. I myself am a former addict of heroin, fentanyl, opiates, methamphetamines, all that. This very easily could have been my story. And the sadness of it is like seeing, did you go to his funeral? Oh, absolutely not. Like, what am I going to say about him? I have nothing good to say about him. It could have been me too. So it's really rethink our lives, people. Like what it is we're doing. Are people going to show up to your funeral? Are people going to care enough to want to show up to your funeral? If yes, great. If you look really deep down into your truth and you think that, like, I don't know, maybe not, might be time to start like really changing your life. I have a book. I got the preamble finally done, which I felt like that was like the most challenging part to like really get the story going. I'm writing it on AI, help like speed up the process. It's like absolutely amazing. I did it to Chat GPT. Chat GPT doesn't seem to write as well as Claude, CLAUDE AI, but Claude, the free version, I like that, but it seems on the free version really limits the length of what you can write without getting timed out. So I switched back over to ChatGPT. I'm happy with like what I got so far, the preamble, the introduction, and the first chapter. I know that this is going to save lives, and this book needs to come out. This was exactly how I did it, like my decade-long journey that I've been on, from being on narcotics, being high, overdosing, passing out on my head 5 different times, breaking my nose, waking up in a pool of blood, and then having a spiritual awakening, having this like download that showed me every aspect of life that shifted me immediately. There's a huge backstory to this, but it's the journey, my documentation, and the tools and tips and everything that I've stumbled upon. And this is amazing. It's a book that like is a roadmap out of hell, your own personal hell. It was a roadmap that I wish I had. I've saved notes that I've written since I was like age 5. When I did the Marie Kondo purge, I had papers. I was a pack rat, clutter everywhere. Like, it was horrible, disgusting. And I had all the papers. I ended up organizing them. I found notes, just my thought process since I was about like age 5, and I like saved most of them, and then I organized them. All the notes of the events I went to, all the teachings and learnings. I went down a spiritual rabbit hole, learning from different religions, trying to figure out like what happened to me with that download, because it was like so interesting. And everything happens for a reason. And I was able to like go back to my notes to like really figure out like what is it that I did, because I'm a miracle. I am a miracle for being able to like overcome all this on my own. No rehab, no AA, no NA. I did it on my own. I had a support group in like a Facebook small group of people, and when we feel connected, there's a thing on TED Talk. There's a guy that talks about the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection, and it's so true. When we find a connection with people, it helps like bring out our own genius. We start to believe that we can do it. And that's, I think, where we failed my friend who passed away from an overdose of fentanyl in the back of a van in front of his mom's house. We need connection so we don't feel afraid. Like what my friend was saying, he was scared. I recognize that. I had a fear of this as well. So like through like traumas that we go through, I'm going through a mental and emotional release breakthrough session. It's 11 weeks, 12 weeks. It helps us eliminate all of our emotional blocks that we carry, all of them. It's the darndest thing, like how quick it works. Just as like fast trauma comes on, just as fast as it can come off. It doesn't take years, decades, or a lifetime of therapy. It could just be just like that, gone. And these are tools. And through the process of like when I went back to look at all my notes to like really like find out what it was, I discovered it, and I'm going to be putting these things in my book. And I'm going to call it now. This is going to be my final draft. Oh, it's going to be like a final. I have an idea to like kind of tweak it once I get it done, but this book needs to come out. It just needs to come out. This is like how I did it. This is like a roadmap I wish I had. This book is going to save a lot of people's lives. And then I will spin it off into content for the rest of my life and helping people resolve their unresolved issues and help them become their most authentic self, so they too can shine their light for others. Because once we resolve our unresolved issues, from my experience, the mind tapers down. We automatically just become our most authentic self. We start to shine, and this will help other people do it as well, which will just eliminate addictions that we carry. We can't just get rid of it. It's just about how we frame it. And we got to inspire ourselves for a future, a compelling future that keeps us driven. Staying driven for the compelling future is where it's at. Addiction is the sorrows of the past. They don't believe in a future. That was my experience. And that's the experience that I've had with a lot of people in my addiction, people that I surrounded myself with. They don't see much hope of a future. All they transcend into the past, which keeps them in a fear level, my experience and my observations. And so when we can create this compelling future, we can just wipe out these blocks that we carry. We start to shine and start to realize that life is very fragile and how beautiful it really, truly is, and how beautiful and amazing these people are around us. As perception starts to open up, it doesn't like get closed into like this narrow box that we trap ourselves in. I'm going to try to find one good thing to say about my friend. My friend who passed away. After high school, Despite his addiction, here we go. Despite his addiction, he had a girlfriend. She passed away too from an overdose. His best friend overdosed from the same thing. But he did take on the responsibility, despite him being deep in his addiction. When they were together, being addicted together, it wasn't a healthy environment for the child. But I will say this: I was able to witness him actually try to take on that role of a father figure to that young girl. So I'll give him that. That's the thing that I could talk good about, to always find the good within people. I'd like to end it on a note. A quote by the Dogra tribe of West Africa. I want you all to really think about this really deep. First off, I want to leave you a quote with that TED Talk for Rat Park. You can go look that video up on TED Talk, or it's probably on YouTube as well. Rat Park. And he talks about the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And the quote from the Dogra tribe, I want you to really think about this. Everyone is a genius. It is the job of the village to acknowledge and support the genius that resides in each one of us. Rest in peace to my friend I just found out about. Passed away last January. Just got word of it today. Processing it. I'm going to stay positive, reach for the higher thought, reach for the higher feeling, as my friend Cindy Eagle talks about. I'm going to wiggle, jiggle, and giggle, and I'm going to, in celebration of my friend. Global Inspiration Nation, stay strong through life. Stay you. Toodaloo, everybody.